Hi, this is Privateer Station, and today we'll bring you day 558 of Russian invasion into Ukraine. As always, with former advisor to the Office of the President of Ukraine, Lieutenant Colonel Alexei Arestovich, and in the new format with Nikolai, Feldman, and Yuri Romanenko. We also welcome Anya Kuchta and Grisha as our new members, and thank you, Bill, for your super thanks. Much appreciated. And with this, let's dive into day 558. Enjoy! Hello everybody, this is Project Alpha. This is a military diary of war in Ukraine. With Alexei Arestovich, we have direct stream on Alpha Media, on Alexei's channel, and Yuri's channel also streams that, even though he's not with us at the moment. He'll probably be late, and we have to apologize that both Alexei and Yuri are traveling this week, and this likely will continue to be like that in the next couple of weeks. So please moderate your comments according to the current situation. Alright, do not forget to click like and subscribe if you have not done that yet. And Alexei, we do have a lot of news, right? We do. I outlined for myself the most important news that Shaheds crossed the border, fell in Romania somewhere, and exploded there. I think the Article 5 of NATO agreement is violated. Nikolai, they will not be reacting. We already understand that. This is already a past issue. The main task of NATO and NATO allies is to prevent this war from spilling beyond the border of Ukraine. And they will probably even swallow if there'll be human casualties in such events. But they have other measures to explain to Russia that she's wrong, and they can express that in different ways, including increasing supply of equipment, ammo, and other military items to Ukraine. So we can say, Alexei, that each of these situations can have a certain positive character in it. It's hard to call it positive, Nikolai, because explosions and endangerment of lives, but we can say that consequences will be better for Ukraine and less favorable for Russian Federation. Okay, there was another piece of news, another positive one, that Ukrainian fighters shot the enemy vessel of the tuna type. What kind of vessel it is and how important do you think it is for Russian troops? Nikolai, I didn't have time to check the characteristics of this boat. But, oh, you mean the video where Bayraktar shot it, right? This one. Yeah, I think that's the one. Well, they tried to land the descent somewhere, a naval group somewhere on the Kherson region, and they got shot. They got noticed and they got shot. And we haven't seen Bayraktar videos for a while now, right? So I think it's an interesting hello to Putin in regards to his meeting with Erdogan that he had today in Sochi, in Russia. Because we haven't seen Bayraktar videos for over a year, right? People were even asking if we do have any of them left, or whether have they been all destroyed already. And it's curious that this video surfaces right during the conversation of Putin and Erdogan. And it's used 70% for intel, maybe 30% with its striking capabilities. And yeah, they destroyed the boat that tried to either deploy Russian troops in that region or pick them up after a mission. But yeah, it destroyed it. So following here with Putin, he is continuing to say that there are not enough conditions for Russia to return to a grain deal. And all this happening with the background of Russian attacks on seaport infrastructure and destruction of Ukrainian agriculture facilities and grain storage and loading facilities. How do we comment on that? Well, that hit on grain facilities in Odessa region happened on the eve of Putin's meeting with Erdogan. So he is basically showing, like he likes to, that he is the owner of that situation and he is the one to trade with, to deal with. But Erdogan doesn't like when he is being talked to like that. And given that they are discussing, probably, the whole array of questions, Libya, Syria, Nagorno-Karabakh, Armenia and Azerbaijan, a grain deal is only one of the questions, which Erdogan is probably weaving into the complex matters that he is trying to resolve, and I think he will find a way to let Putin know that he is wrong. How and when, we'll see. Well, look, they also discussed removal of sanctions from Russian Agriculture Bank and re-enabling SWIFT operations for them. And that means that Putin's blackmail has some effectivity, right? It wouldn't have effectivity if the other side wasn't interested in certain parts of that. The thing is that sanctions were slapped on Russia by the West. So in order for Turkey to remove these sanctions, it will need to talk to the collective West, because Turkey is not the one posting or implementing these sanctions. So it becomes just one of the parties in that conversation. They can also appeal to United Nations, but in any case, there'll be some representation of the countries of the West who will be agreeing or not and reviewing how to, in what format, to these requests by Putin. And I think it is only the beginning of this conversation, because it will likely be a lengthy process for these bodies to figure out if they can come to an agreement. And we did hear before about some softening of some elements of sanctions. Yeah, we talked about that before too. There were some meetings in Budapest, and before that there are others. It's a long story. The deal took a while to compile together. Russia was leaving it. It took them quite a bit to leave it. And now the next deal likely will take some time. It's not just one agreement between Putin and Erdogan. It's something that all parties need to come to an agreement to. And there are conditions about ammonia supplies to the world market, which is also a separate question, but is involved with the grain deal as Russia sees it. Okay, so we still have an actual question of air defense systems, the ones that supposedly should be covering Odessa region as well. And it does appear that Putin can keep hitting Odessa and other parts of Ukraine that he wishes. It almost appears that we are not doing much and the world is not really doing much to help us. Well, not exactly, Nikolai. Since by the way, since the last attack, where there was a report that 8 missiles were shot down, that tells that they do have some equipment. The problem is that it's a big region, and Russia hit the port that is technically a river port, but a class of River Sea, and we do a lot of cargo loading in that port too. And it's a big territory. You need to have a much larger umbrella to cover it. It's a perpetual problem of Ukraine to cover all the objects. But on the other hand, Russia is bigger, and it's more difficult for them to cover their objects, which are now possibly within reach. Let's go to talk about G20. That's where Erdogan and the rest are going to negotiate details of the big Green Deal revival, and also to address the matter of how can they change agreements that they reached in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. And now apparently Xi Jinping is not coming to G20. Right, Putin is not going there, Xi is not going there, and there are countries who are not consumers of that grain are gathering there. So Biden already expressed his disappointment with Xi Jinping for not coming there, because he says they were going to discuss these matters. But this deal will be discussed in some capacity because India is interested, and India is the organizer. And they're facing a drought this year. They are mostly consuming rice, but they still eat bread, so that's still an important part. And they will be discussing matters of grain deal. It's still a question of to what degree, and it's a lengthy process. It's not going to be resolved within one meeting. one essentially needs to develop a new system of relations between countries. What do you say about Xi Jinping's refusal to attend? I think it's his reaction, his poking at India, because their relations are far from smooth, and they recently had BRICS event when they both were attending, and probably something didn't work out between them. India didn't agree to something that China might have proposed, and China is responding to that. It is a long story of relations that they have, and it's not a smooth one. They have a lot of conflicts. All right. On the backdrop of all that, there is another scandal unfolding in Germany, where in Bundestag they're accusing Scholz in blocking the supply of long-range TAURUS missiles to Ukraine. And this is also something that can be connected to additional favors for Russia preparing for the new grain deal. So, what would Germany, do you think, be afraid of in this case? Why are they doing it? I don't think Germany has anything to be afraid of, Nikolai. But if we remember another stream that we did here with a historian, and I'll try to make it compact, but I'm not quoting directly. It might sound harsher than it is, but that's just because of shortening the statement. Germany is waking up from several decades of sleeping under American domination in the world, and Germany and China built an economic infrastructure of a union between Asia and Europe, where Germany was an effective player, one of the main players. The war has rerouted a lot of these things, and there are still some instruments that Putin can use to deliver his position to Germany and to provide additional pressure on them, or Germany might be interested in something, and there is a borderline demand on Russian side to not supply these missiles for probably something else they're discussing with Germany. So, because these TAURUS missiles are super effective, they actually cause a lot of grief to Russian troops here, but we don't know all the details. But since we got to accusations, and the head of the defense committee in Bundestag, Maria, was attacking him and was Scholz, and it probably means that the scandal is pretty harsh, because small issues do not bubble up. Usually it has to be something very sharp on the matter that usually doesn't bubble up to the public discussion. It might be a new flavor of German political coalition discussion framework, and their coalition is hanging by a thread there. It's a difficult and delicate structure. And that means the reason is serious, and since it's now in a public discussion field, we might actually get an idea of what makes Scholz hold these missiles, because we've been talking about them for a while. And besides that, France is already supplying their missiles, so Germany doesn't really have much of a fallback. There are already other countries supplying it. So it's interesting. It's interesting to see what precludes Germany from supplying these missiles. They already are providing us a wide nomenclature, just with the exception of these missiles. Guys, a quick ask, do not forget to click like and subscribe if you have not done that yet. If you're watching that in English, do that for the privateer station. That helps bring us new viewers to the channel. Let's go to the map. The Institute of War confirmed advancement of Ukrainian military in the west of southern Zaporozhye region and near Bakhmut. On the 3rd, I'm quoting here, on the 3rd of September, Ukrainian military advanced near Bakhmut, in the vicinity of Bakhmut, and in the southern front, on the western segment of southern front. We can bring the map up and discuss it. Alright, let's bring the map. The main thing for today is the statement by our commander Tarnavsky that journalists of many countries are failing to understand, and a lot of civilians And frankly, even some of the military do not quite grasp it. The main thing here is not about the breakthrough, which is important also, but the most important part is that Russia is wasting their resources too quickly. That's the most important part of his statement. It is not the defense line that is defending the positions, that defending the front. It's actually troops that are doing it. If there were no people there, we would have crossed all these fortifications a long time ago. So all this game is about growing the losses and forcing each other to use their reserves. And whoever touches the reserves first is losing. Russian problem is that they do not have any reserves in the south, and they now have to bring some from the eastern front to the south, and even they are failing. Our troops also need some refitting there and additional resources, so now they're holding the ground that they occupied, and they're providing defense on the flanks, and they're getting ready to repel counter-offensive actions by Russian army. And whenever we repel it, we'll continue our advancement. And our enemy apparently is going to use whatever they aggregated, that 76th Paratroopers Division, and a couple others. And the proof that their things are not so shiny is because they are using a whole lot of different detachments here. You can see these diamonds. Each of them is a different kind, is a different detachment. It is not one cohesive machine. It is a hodgepodge potpourri of different detachments brought from other parts of the front. And now they're starting to use that tank brigade that was on the right as well. And they can't really. What it makes hard, they're not cohesive. They haven't fought together for a long time, and they're not built together to work as single machinery. So it's difficult to manage it. And now we're also seeing some exotic detachments there, like Intel Division of the Pacific Fleet, which shouldn't even be here, or some military intel detachments of the top caliber that Russia has, which are elite and shouldn't be sitting in the trenches, but they don't know what else to take, and they're trying to figure out that, and also where to get the armor and artillery to bring to that front. And what we need to do now is probably hold the breach that we established, and then after that we'll need to continue going forward. And the question would be, would it be a fast move or would it be a slow grinding? So we'll see. Even with the slow grinding, you see, we do have some good achievements there. The second part is Bakhmut. One can see that we are getting some ground in Klishevka and Andreevka on this vertical segment of the front. You can see the blue line there. And we are encircling Kurdyumovka at this point. And what is being done here would allow us to cut the road that leads to Bakhmut, Bakhmut-Gorovka, that allows the enemy to supply Bakhmut. That doesn't already exist. They have to use the eastern side to resupply Bakhmut, and this is the road that they had to take when they were taking Bakhmut. That's when it made our things more difficult. And if we go up north, please scroll. Belogorivka, a little higher. Serebrin Forestry, Yampol, and coming close to Svatova. That's where they're trying to attack. See the red arrows? There were some serious fights, and we managed to actually push back, and as you see the blue perch there, we managed to push them back and grab some of their positions. They still are failing to take Sinkovka near Kupiansk, where they already made a post 3 times that they have taken it, and they still haven't. Same fighting continues near Marinka and Adeyevka, down south in the southeast. And there are some activity further south near Vuglidar. They're more tactical, they're not important on the operative side, but if need be, they can be re-emphasized to become operative level maneuvers. And of course, here near Velika Novoselka, we also continue pushing towards Zavetny Bazhanya, near Orlinskaya, Georgievka. That's where we're going to. There are some statements saying that we're already in Zavetny Bazhanya. You can see 2 diamonds near the blue area, but we're not exactly there, we're around it. And the general direction is Volodina, that we're expanding our efforts. And the proof that it is getting hard for them there, difficult to hold the line, they're bringing in the 5th Tank Brigade, the ones that were burning back in the 2014 time conflict. And they are starting to pop here and there on that front. So they're using that tank reserve. And there are not too much active operations here. Everything is really tactical. And we're just regrouping reserves, bringing more efforts to the front. And again, the enemy is running out of their reserves, and we still have a lot of them. And I'm true to my earlier prognosis that probably by November, end of October, we'll be expecting some fundamental news from that front. And their offensive on the Eastern Front is failing, and the fact that they have to pull troops from the Eastern Front to the south is another good indicator that they're not going to succeed on the East. And remember, just a little while ago, they were talking about 900 tanks, 100,000 troops, and that new campaign near Kupiansk and Svatova to push further, yet no, didn't work for them. If we go back to Robotina, here to that perch, we have established a wider area there, right? Indeed, we are conducting tactical actions here. We're expanding the territory that we liberated, and we need to fortify ourselves there to withstand the counteroffensive. And you can see Fedorovka there, Fedorovka to the right. That's where they are planning to try to cut our perch and see if they can succeed. But I think they will not be able to do that. But from us, it is important for us now to fortify our flanks, to make sure we can stand and hold whatever they throw at us on the flanks. Because this war, once again, proved the same old truth that your flanks need to be strong. Without strong flanks, you cannot continue advancing. So we need to prepare for that, and that's what we're doing right now. Both sides are learning. We have initially suffered a few operations where we did not learn to be too good with the flanks, so we did have to endure and figure it out along the way. Now I think we already know how to deal with this, and I suspect we'll just accumulate a bit more resources on this front, hold for a bit, and then continue our effort down south. And when their reserves will completely run dry, and they're going dry already, and perhaps when we get to Pshenichna, to the second line of defense, they will run out of troops to use to reinforce their positions. So basically, Deep State is now showing that Ukrainian military are at the second line of defense, right? That probably means that we already are on the second line. Yeah, Deep State is very conservative in terms of their publications. They do not publish things immediately when the news just pop up, so they're not the first ones to reflect changes of the front line. They're waiting for things to be confirmed by both sides. And I know a lot of elements too, but I'm usually holding my tongue to not say something extra. I usually use Russian references and other things that already published that information. I'm trying not to reveal anything. I'm not referencing our troops and what I hear from the front. Perhaps I'm only referencing our general command whenever we can already make a statement that we are in that region. For sure, when we got there and we fortified and we can hold it now. So this is a positive moment, of course. So this map is more conservative than the situation really is on the front. It would be nice to report immediately, right, to say that whenever the first of our troops is on the northern border of Verbavoya, to claim that we are there. But best would be first to take it and then say that we did. We got Yuri Romanenko joining us. Yes, hello everybody. Okay, join our lively discussion tonight. I don't know which news you think is the most important. If you have anything to bring to start with. I haven't heard, guys. What were you talking about before? Sorry, I've missed a few minutes. Did you guys talk about Reznikov and his resignation? No, we haven't. We can actually start now. Reznikov made a statement, and I'll quote from that just a second. About $100 million? That one? Not only this, he also made a statement that volunteer aid to the front constitutes 3%, and I'm quoting now. I can say that support from volunteers from 24th of February to today is only a 30% of what we have on the front. A day on this war cost us $100 million. And now imagine how much resources and everything goes in the front when we spend $100 million for this war daily. And here I want to say that the cost of this war is tremendous. And we all know that Ukraine is still afloat due to support of the West, including both arms and financial support and technological and other things. But on the other hand, this number cannot just be extrapolated and said that 3% is not important. One cannot say that volunteer aid is minimal. It actually is the other way around. We talked with Datsuk today, we both paid attention to that number. And today my subscribers just asked me, as a good example, to collect some money for tires for one of the detachments, because they recently got tires blown and they do need the wheels to continue running the operation successfully. So this is the question, these are the 3% that define life and death, that need immediate concern, immediate help. Tourniquets, tires, UAVs, Mavic drones, vehicles. This is what government cannot solve quickly because they're bureaucratic. It takes them a while to figure things and to get things in motion. So simple people together with volunteers are covering these issues for the front. So all that machine that is being funded by our allies and our government, it does depend on these 3% because they are the ones that they are that lubricant that allows for that machine to continue functioning effectively, to not fall apart as any vehicle, right? If you don't change oil in the engine just stalls eventually. What do you say, Alexei, on this? Well, yeah, one needs to understand his statement in the context, right? He was basically showing the volumes that he needs to operate while managing his front. He was probably going to show the volume and to outline the amount of resources he needed to coordinate and not to bring down the effort of volunteers, because he actually was working a lot with volunteers to figure out the effective ways to supply volunteer aid to the front and to create some auditing and control mechanisms that allow for effective pathways. And here some people are attacking Reznikov with his activities, and there are some ineffectivity elements of army. People don't know much about his work, but I would say this from what I know, is that everything that was in his total ownership as the manager, he highlighted that and he made it super effective. Everything that he owned was working smooth. And that includes Rammstein and many other of the international agreements and supply lines and implementation of certain logistics vehicles in the military. I knew these angles very well, and I want to thank him dearly because he is a very effective manager, a very effective person, and the history will judge him later. But I do know how much did he bring to Ukraine. I know his input in Rammstein meetings, and a lot of things were done there on a personal level. If you look at the number of thank yous from ministers of defense of NATO countries, I just wanted to bring this up. Yeah, in Twitter and other media, their ministers of defense are singing asanas to him. And yeah, by the way, note that these ministers of defense, they do not need public opinion to support them. They're people who are appointed. They're people who are doing their work. And still, they're coming out and telling how wonderful he was. So the history will judge him, but again, he was very effective in his position, to the degree that he was allowed to. And okay, so we do have a statement from him that he is resigning, and there is a new candidacy of Rustam Umerov, his replacement. We also have reaction to that replacement, that Rustam is the first Muslim bureaucrat in the Ukrainian government, in a good sense of this word, manager and Minister of Defense. What do you say about this candidacy, Alexei? He's not a simple figure. He's a complex one. He's got a lot of international relations, including Turkey, and he was intermediary on different summits, including Jeddah, and he was involved actively in bringing Azov fighters back. He was never serving in Ukrainian military. I don't know his exact biography, but I don't think he was anything more than, he has more than a soldier experience, if he has that. But to be an effective Minister of Defense, one needs to be more a good manager, a good logistics manager, rather than the military. And given that most of our military aid is coming from abroad, he's got really good connections there. He's known there, especially in the Muslim countries, which might as well mean that there might be new trends in providing national security for Ukraine with additional support in the Muslim countries, for example, king dynasties of the Persian Gulf. I wouldn't say put that on the banner yet, of course, but just looking at his biography, that's one of the first thoughts that comes to mind. And I hope, and I guess we'll hope, that he'll be at least as effective as Reznikov. That is very important for us as the country, so we'll wish him all kinds of success, and let's see. There is another interesting statement that we want to discuss, that comes from the statement of Armenian President Pashenyan, who says that, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, it's Prime Minister of Armenia, not President. And he's saying that Armenia made a mistake in relying on Russia as the strategic partner. And many people are discussing that. But a lot of people and there's a new angle. Günther Felling actually made a statement that after this statement by Armenia, it would make sense for Armenia to join NATO. And this was a good statement. I was actually thinking about making that news a main news for today. You know, the tragedy of Armenian people is that when they won the war, for different reasons, including direct support of Russia and military engagement, and they're military specialists, and in Armenia and Azerbaijan, they won the first Karabakh war. The main clan in Armenia, that position was taken by Karabakh clan, which was rather corrupt, which was dealing with drugs, bring different goods and agree schemes across the border, contraband items, and they were prevailing in the political structures of Armenia, and democratic forces in Armenia were growing, took a long detour on their way to growth. Pashenyan became a leader, and he basically was conducting a slow revolution of decency in Armenia, and he was trying to take apart Karabakh clan, and that clan was very tight with Moscow, was very corrupted by Moscow, and Pashenyan at that time wanted to, for his country that was tight between his neighbors and didn't have an access to a sea, and he was trying to find a better path, and he, at that moment, could not turn to what they considered to be enemies, Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. They needed to rely on Russia at that moment. And then there was a second Karabakh war when Azerbaijan won, and Pashenyan was almost removed from power, and he went to legitimize his effort. He went for another elections. He got legitimized, and then he re-emphasized his effort to disassemble Karabakh clan, but he is in a difficult position of having to fight that and Moscow influence among them. At the same time, they are discovering that Moscow, their nearest ally, as they thought, was supplying and trading actively with Azerbaijan and Turkey. And Russia was working with those countries on opening another pipeline through Armenia and Azerbaijan and other areas. So they discovered that one of their sponsors, who actually propped them up to even fight this war, is playing with their enemies, supposedly. And Pashenyan discovered that a while ago, but they have their own rhythms and other things. And CSTO also had to fail them a couple times on their requests. And Armenia is losing their control over Karabakh because Azerbaijan continues building certain outposts that provide better control of the territory, and Russian peacekeepers are not really interfering. And basically, it's Russian diplomacy that is conducting all that theater to act in a way it does. And finally, he ripened to these historic words that their strategic reliance on Russia was a mistake. And I guess the next step for him would be to acknowledge that the offer by Azerbaijan and Turkey was a good offer. That pipeline that went through Tbilisi was a long and roundabout way, and it's not a random situation where it went through Georgia, while instead it could have gone through Armenia on a much faster route. And Azerbaijan and Turks were suggesting that. They were going over a bunch of problems they had with Armenia and historic issues they had. They still were going for reasonable solutions, and Armenia refused that back then. So today a key phrase was said, and I hope that Armenian people will understand where their true interests lie, and they will take offers by their neighbors. Because without a good life with their neighbors, good relations with their neighbors, they can't really have good future. Because right now they do have some influence, some relations with Russia, generally good relations with Georgia, and I'm putting that in quotes because we know how difficult the situation is in Georgia. One day, Russian influence there will be over, and the price will be the suffering of Armenian people. And I think it'll be up to them, of course, to decide, but I would suspect they do need to align themselves better with their immediate neighbors, with Azerbaijan and Turkey, and those suggestions are actually profitable for them. And finally, in the long term, to end with Russia as the main instigator of the military conflict in that area and leave CSTO and perhaps look for other countries to support Armenia, because there are other countries, and there are enough countries in the world they can find as allies. United States, France, Greece, and some others. And they can bring questions about perspectives of joining other military blocs. And almost immediately we heard NATO saying, hey, why don't you join? So that's an interesting story, given that Turkey is in NATO. Friends, do not forget to click the like button to support this stream. And we have about 100,000 viewing us live, and we have probably 30,000 likes, so please catch up on this. Yuri, you had also something to say. Sorry, I interrupted you. There are a lot of questions here in our chat about the mobilization law. Miroslava is asking a question. Please comment on mobilization efforts in Ukraine and mobilization politics. Well, that generally, before Alexei chimes in, as we said, the war goes into a long framework, and Budanov commented on that too, that Russia is looking to mobilize 500,000 people, and will be doing it now, and probably more by spring next year. So, of course, Ukraine, it's obvious, will continue with our own mobilization to counterbalance the efforts done by Russia. There is nothing surprising here. Will there be mobilization? Yes, of course it will be. I think our leadership and Zelensky have mentioned that, addressed that as well. Right, Yuri, we cannot avoid this topic. We have three strong signals this week, and they're as follows. First, in Polish press, there was an article about 100,000 Ukrainian service-age males crossed the border in one direction from Ukraine and never came back. Then there was a discussion by Armenia that perhaps some of these people could be extradited back. And then there is also a discussion of lifting certain rights to postpone the draft for those who are studying in the universities. So until 30, that basically expands everybody until 30 gets into the draft queue. And also there is a separate feature of the law that being proposed that expands the framework of who can be drafted, and they are even considering closed forms of tuberculosis, HIV in a non-active state. So that poses a lot of questions, because where will they serve? They can be serving in logistics and back of the front to enable those who are not limited by any incapacity or physical disease or something to be more in the front, because usually it's only about 20 out of 100 that actually will see the front line. But there are legitimate questions coming from medical department now. How do frontline medics, how are they going to cope with that? They're working elbow deep in blood, and if that blood is contaminated, if there's a virus in this blood, how do we protect our doctors? And you need 3 months to prepare an infantry person, but you might need 6 years to prepare a good doctor. And even paramedic takes years to produce. So they're the most precious cadre on the front, some of the most precious cadre on the front. So I have not seen the exact details of numbers, and do we really need, that's another good question, do we really need to expand the framework to include people with certain types of diseases into the draft? But in general, yeah, we understand the logic. We definitely would have to mobilize some. If they are bringing 500,000 to the front, we at least need to bring 200, 250,000 to balance that. And we are going into the long-term military conflict framework, and we need to understand that maybe even this wave will not be the last one. All right, we have also information coming from Reich Pospolita, which at first published that they are extraditing some of the men who are being drafted or draftable, and then they pedaled it back. No, yeah, this was a mistake first by this article in Poland. They initially said that they are just extraditing the group that was aiding in illegal crossing and evading and fleeing Ukraine to those who went by unofficial routes. Because in order to extradite other just citizens, that's a big question. You need to go through Interpol, you need to go through proper legal and police functions in order to get there, and getting back tens of thousands of people, no, it's a long ask. But we need to understand that this restriction, this group of actions are going to occur in one way or another, and mobilization will occur. It needs to happen. So it's curious to see how it unfolds. There is probably a good discussion as to, do we need medically incapacitated people in the front? So again, this is not to criticize our military, but in general, but to try to inspect in depth the details of that law. In Israel, army is a holy cow that you cannot attack, but it's definitely being criticized and being scrutinized over different things. So that's, I think, what we should be doing here too. We should keep an eye on everything legal connected to the military. United Nations did not find enough proof that Russia is conducting genocide on the territory of Ukraine. Their statement says that they did not find enough evidence to support genocide accusation. And we remember that a few months ago, there were a lot of statements by different sides saying that this is genocide, and Bucha events and others, they underline that. Well, Nikolai, political statements and legal classifications are different things. There are very well-versed professionals in legalese in the United Nations who know that every letter of their statement will be attacked and reviewed and scrutinized. So if they make a mistake, they will lose definitely a lot of their reputation. So they're being careful. From the legal framework, genocide is definitely a narrow thing, and it's not so easy to prove it. As political statement, yes, these qualifications were coming from not only Ukraine, but other countries, representatives of other countries. And people do consider what's happening a genocide, but on the legal front, it is difficult to prove that. You need a certain body of proof and certain gateways, certain gates met in order to qualify it as genocide. And it's not because they're so picky, it's because it's difficult the way it's written. International law is written in a way that it's difficult to prove it, so they haven't given up yet, as far as I understood. They're definitely not interested in hiding facts in this commission. This is not Olympic Committee, who said that we cannot see international sport without Russian sportsmen. There was another interesting statement today. These people work differently. But again, besides genocide, there are other qualifications that can be assigned to what Russia is doing here, like military crimes and crimes against humanity, and those who committed them, they will actually not be off the hook, even if genocide will not be proven. Because we still have the moral and political position that it was genocide, but one needs to remember that one guy is already being accused in kidnapping, right? One baldy shorty. It's not genocide, but it's one of the heaviest crimes internationally without terms, without expiration date. So all the military crimes and crimes against humanity, they do not have expiration date. And this includes all the top military command, political command of Russia, and all of those who were fighting here in this war on the Russian side. Everybody, from infantryman to a general, these things are not forgiven. There are no expiration dates for military crimes, for war crimes, and crimes against humanity. So even if genocide is not proven, there are other ways to get them on the hook and prosecute them. Minister of Defense of Russia continues to aggregate the influence of Wagner, former known Wagner areas. Yevkurov is now visiting Africa. He visited Syria, Libya, Burkina Faso, all those places where Wagner had established control, and basically he's taking control over to Ministry of Defense. What do you say about that? I think that's additional proof to you that Prigozhin is not alive. Even if he is doing some, following conspiracy theories, plastic surgery somewhere, as a political statement, he doesn't exist anymore. And Wagner will not exist, will cease to exist. In the current framework, they probably will have to bring it back to military framework, and the specialists will remain. They probably will be doing things less effectively than under Prigozhin, but they probably will have more order in that troop. And Russian military think that order trumps quality, and actually there is some truth to that. In long-term, order definitely trumps class. So Yevkurov is exactly that kind of person to do that. Those people who served with him, they're saying he's dumb AF. And some Americans are still wondering how can these people be making these statements when they hear what Russian generals say. But yeah, that's the Russian military system for you. Alexei, and then this juxtaposition of, figuratively speaking, army with Shoigu and FSB and the rest of the power agencies bloc that was propping up Prigozhin and his people. Can one say that military group finally got their satisfaction after Prigozhin for the last year was bringing them down, was cursing them every way? Of course, and moreover, even the manner of assassination or his elimination was confirming that this is a revenge. One of the first elements that was brought to his grave was the pictures of 10 pilots that were shot by his troops on their way to Moscow. And military put him and his people in place because Putin agreed to do that. And without Putin's blessing, nobody would allow to shoot the portraits of the commanding generals and Minister of Defense, which Prigozhin people were doing. And Putin, however, he is a mafia and all, but he is still relying on the governmental mechanisms. And Prigozhin was an out-of-system factor. So he had to either take over and then reformat that power, because otherwise they would have needed eventually to reformat him or eliminate him. And as I said before, there was probably not enough in his head. Some marbles were missing, so he didn't get the picture enough that he cannot start that motion and not finish it. At the same time, Putin does need centralized government because you cannot recruit 450,000 people and throw them to the front, and you cannot negotiate with Erdogan and other countries outside without having a cohesive state. So, weighing one against the other, the order and the governmental mechanisms prevailed over Prigozhin and a more wild approach to management. And one can say that Prigozhin put an end to himself when his troops shot up the portraits of Gerasimov and Shoigu and the others, and FSB that essentially were provoking Prigozhin to go against Gerasimov and Shoigu executed Putin's order to eliminate him. And the one who will eventually come there will have to eliminate Putin's power, but then again to make a bet on the centralized government. And that's about it. Alright, one more thing, Alexei. Let's address this. Right before we started our stream, there was a news about mobilization in Ukraine. Our General Commander Zaluzhny appointed the hero of Ukraine, Denis Chayok, as the head of military recruitment in Lvov region. So it outlines that new policy of using heroes of war as heads of recruitment offices. Well, we're still yet to see if that will be beneficial to all of us as a society, because this is a very specific function and a very hot place. And one thing to be a hero of Ukraine on the battlefield, another to conduct these processes, to follow them. So we'll see how that works. Well, in any case, at least we can see the intent of our general commander to appoint proven people from the front on these hot positions. Okay, colleagues, we've been about an hour live, and I think at this we can say stop today. Thank you for coming live despite the difficulties and traveling. Till we meet again in a couple days. Yep. See you guys on Wednesday.